So let's talk about the soul. Let's see what the soul's about. Let's first of all convince ourselves that there is a soul, okay? Because, like in any conversation you have, there has to be a premise about what you agree on. So, for example, every time you come, the premise is that I'm going to share an idea, you're going to take it or throw it out, etc. But the basic assumptions are correct. For example, everyone agrees that morality is a good thing. The only question is, what's morality? Everyone agrees that raising your kids to be good people is a fantastic attribute, but not necessarily do we agree how to raise the kids. Everyone agrees that the world would be a nicer place if we stopped fighting so much, but very few of us can actually figure out how that happens. So what's the basic assumption about a soul? The basic assumption about a soul is that you, when I say you, I see we have a bunch of names over here, Charlene, Ilana, Janine, Marcia, etc. If I say you, who are you? Your nose? And if you get a nose job, it's not you anymore, right? Your eyes? Your mouth? Can't be, because the deaf mute is also as much a human as you are. You're walking? No. Talking? No. Your brain? No, and I'll tell you why. Because what if somebody's brain dead? You still refer to them as a living being. You still refer to them as a person. You don't say, oh, shame, they're brain dead, so they're no longer, you might not be familiar with their character, or you might be looking at them and they're looking at you blankly, and it's a frustrating experience. A person has dementia, Alzheimer's, etc. But they're still them. They might not be the full experience of them, and that's why it's so painful to watch loved ones go through these kind of illnesses. But they are still there. And the question is, who's them? Because pretty much you can replace these days almost every limb, including a heart, and even the brain, which we still cannot replace. But we all agree that that's not the fundamental part of the human being. It's a part, it's a very important part. But who are you? When you look at your child and you say, I love you, who's you? I love your features. I love your dimples. I love the way you dress. I love your body. I mean, that's pretty base. It's nice to have good looking kids, but I really hope that that's not what we love in our kids, their looks. When you love your parent, what's that love? Yes, there's appreciation for hopefully the decent parenting or half decent parenting they've done on us. But what is it? What am I loving in them? Them, you. And for me, whatever you believe that you is, I'm going to use the term soul. In other words, it's an essence. It's your being. Eckhart Tolle calls it, I believe he calls it the being or the essence. Some people call it the it, the ultra ego, the you, the true I. I love you, not my heart, not my brain. I love you. That I and that you is soul. It's the intangible about us. You know, in my life, I think back of like all the times I questioned my faith, which I do, by the way, till today, just putting it out there that questioning faith is not a crime. And if it's a crime, I'm guilty of it. One of the concepts that always resonates with me when I'm struggling in that is this idea of invisibility still existing. And I think in the age of coronavirus, it's so real because right now we're facing a threat that unless you're looking under a very, very good microscope, you have no idea what the threat is. But you believe the scientist who told you that they saw that COVID circle with the spikes coming out you believe them, and you know that that invisible thing that you will never see with your naked eye is real. In other words, we are much more sophisticated in seeing the invisible than our ancestors ever were. If you think of people 4,000 years ago, and you would tell them that there's invisible energies going around, the only thing invisible that they saw was maybe wind, but even wind, you could, if it's a real gust, you could see it, or at least you could see the outcome. You could see the leaves, sorry, going back and forth. You can see the grass moving, whatever. But once upon a time, the primitive human being, I'm not going to call us when we were cavemen. I don't believe we ever were. Or if we were, yeah, you know what, fine, we were cavemen. Zolzan. So once upon a time when we were really primitive and we only lived in a cave, and all we could see is the here and now. This cup has water. This cup is real. This water is real. This book is real. I deal with real things. But right now, I'm talking to you through a mechanism that is totally invisible for both of us. In other words, if you and I have no idea how this thing is working, that I'm sitting in front of my laptop in my home with a fake background and talking to you in your home, it's still, even if I can never explain it, the fact is it's working, and something invisible is happening that's allowing it to happen. So the point is, invisible does not mean it doesn't exist. So that can't be an argument. The only argument could be, there is no soul simply because I am my body. That's all I am. But I don't believe any of us truly believe that within ourselves. In other words, we know that when we love somebody, when you feel a soul connection to somebody, that it's deeper than anything. And that that person could lose everything about them and you'll still love them till the last minute. So what's a soul? A soul is you minus your body. That's what it is. In other words, you are not your body. You are you, and you have a body. And when I say I miss my dad, I'm talking about him, his existence, the way it was manifest in a body, obviously. You know, like I believe he's a spirit right now, but I can't get my head around that, and I can't see him. But I know that he isn't the body, but the way I knew him for 30 plus years was within a body, and that's the way we engaged. I engaged with him based on the fact that he was a spirit within a body, and we were able to engage because through this body, he was able to communicate. Through this body, he was able to help. Through this body, he was able to do tremendous acts of kindness. Through this body, I was able to touch him and feel him, even though I knew that this is his hand. It's not him. That means, heaven forbid, someone loses a hand, they're still them. But it was some way of connecting to them. So that's why death is so traumatic for us, even for those of us who believe in a soul. It's because we are physical people and we engage with the invisible through something visible. In other words, I could sit there giving you a great theory about how amazing it is that this internet's working and broadcasting from my place to your place. But that's irrelevant. What's relevant is you want to be able to sit in front of the screen and I want to sit in front of the screen and we want to converse with each other. We want to have a conversation. So we are physical people who engage with physicality, but sometimes it's important for us to remember that there's something invisible going on beyond it. There's something going on inside of you. There's something going on inside of me. There's something there that's beyond my body. I am not my body. I don't say I hurt when my head is sore. I say my head hurts. I don't say my heart. The heart is sore. You don't say that. You say my heart. So who's my? My head, my heart, my leg, my torso. It's I that's talking about something else. So I am not that. Just think about it in the English language. Nobody says, I, the head, is sore. You're always talking about your limbs as third person. My eye can't see. Everything's third person. Why are you talking third person? Isn't that weird? When do you talk about I feel. That's an intangible thing. I love. You don't say my heart loves you because that really sounds pathetic. Honey, you know, I've been analyzing and I come to the conclusion that my heart really loves you. I could just think of less romantic things. I have more romantic things to say. Or my brain agrees with you. No, you only use I when it's intangible. I agree with you. I love you. But whenever you talk about something tangible of you, think about this. You never use the word I. It's my this. So if it's like a tangible pain in your heart, you'll say, my heart is sore. Or I am sore in my heart. But when you're talking about intangible and things which are what I would like to call spiritual in nature, can't touch them. Love, connection, or feelings. You talk it yourself. And yes, slowly science is slowly starting to see at least a bit of feelings, the way they manifest in the brain and this and that. But it's still very much an intangible thing, even though I know feelings are real, believe me. And you know that feelings are real, even though we cannot prove it. But the output, the fact that we feel, shows that something is going on in me beyond biology. I have real connections. I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've all had it with at least one friend in your life. You have what's called a soul connection. You sit across a person for the first time and you just feel like this person is your soulmate, not necessarily your romantic soulmate, but like you belong together. This person is great for you. It's not necessarily the way they listen to you. You know, therapists also know how to listen to you well. It's just this person belongs in my life. They're just there. And intangibility. And that is your soul. I is my soul. Which soul? Now that's a conversation. Because when you think I'm saying soul, you must be thinking about a nice little moon that's yellow and shiny and excited and passionate, and it beats inside your heart, and it's your neshama. Not necessarily. Tanya, which is one of the greatest books in Jewish learning that's ever been written, argues, based on Jewish mysticism, that we have two souls. We have an animal soul and we have a godly soul. There's two eyes within each individual. There's the eye that I spoke to you about, the eye of emotion, the eye of fear. That's not necessarily godly. When I say I'm afraid, that's not like my godly soul being afraid. There's another eye inside of me. There is an animal within me, not a bad animal, and we have nothing against animals. All animal lovers, please just, Animal, by definition, means more emotion, less brains. That's why you love your dog, because there's a lot of emotion and very little brains to sit there arguing against you, versus your kid, who when they were a young child, there was a lot of emotion and very little brain, so they were absolutely delightful. And as their brain matured, you're suddenly like, whoa. I remember I've shared it before at the share. I believe that each pet you have is another child you should have had and just need love to express. And many people, when I tell them that, they laugh and they say, yes, but my dog is never going to actually start being chutzpahdik to me and never going to tell me off. So, Rabbi, I'll take the dog, not the baby. And I can't argue with it. Can't, yeah, just emotion. It's just love. It's absolute love. That's why even the word for dog in Hebrew is kelev, which translates as kulolev, full of heart, full of emotion. It's beautiful, just full of emotion. Just pure love. So there's this part of us that's an animal, but that's not a negative. I'm not talking about it as a negative entity. It's just animalistic. And just like animals have feelings, this has feelings. And just like an animal wants to eat, this animal, and just like the animal loves touch, this the human being loves touch, etc. Intimacy, the whole spectrum of human experience, most of it at least, happens within this animal, and this animal engages. So that I am an animal. And then there's I, the neshama. And what's the neshama? The one, the voice that doesn't only allow me to be ordinary, but calls on me to be extraordinary. The part within you that makes you not just be a nice person, but to be ultra nice. Not just to be a good person, but to be connected. The part of you that brought you to this, to listen to this today. The part of you that is aware that Rosh Hashanah is coming in a month, and whether or how you're going to celebrate Rosh Hashanah, it means something. That Yom Kippur means something. And you're going to fast for 25 hours because even you buy into it, you don't buy into it, there's this inside of you that just says, okay, this is important. When I die, I want to be buried by a rabbi. I don't know why, I just know. When my son is born, I want him to have a bris. Why? I don't know. That part of you, that's your neshama. The animal part of us is the one that dominates most of the day. That means even when I'm talking to you now, I'd like to believe my godly soul's a bit involved in this conversation and there's a bit of godliness inside, but ultimately this is my animal. I'm talking to you in my style about ideas that I understand in my own brain. It's very much me, the human being, talking to you. And that's the animal. Not a bad animal, hopefully a half-decent, intelligent animal. But then there's the part within me that's not just trying to, have a nice conversation and maybe chat you up for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, but rather there's this part of me that really wants to get a message across, really wants to hopefully get you and myself to think about something in a different way and to transform us. That part is my godly soul. I believe not only because the Tanya said so, but I believe this to be very true in my own life. This idea that there's two beings within me and they're fighting for domination within me. They're fighting for power within me. I'll give you an example of what my day looked on Saturday, Shabbos. I woke up, and for some reason, I woke up earlier than I wake up most Shabboses. I felt like my godly soul was on fire. It was the Shabbos Mavarchim. I was blessing the new month, the Hebrew month of Elul, which is going to start, we blow the shofar Thursday, Friday. It's a custom to say the whole Tehillim. So I got up right away, said the whole Tehillim. Davening suddenly just flowed. I sang through the whole davening, some made up tunes, some tunes I've heard before. I was in the garden. I was totally in the zone, sat down, had to learn my Talmud. Everything was just grafting. It was just working, which doesn't happen often for me, by the way. So that's why I could talk about it, because it happened to me recently, but it doesn't happen often. But comes that evening, after I felt like I'm really flying, like, dude, you're like in a spiritual level, man. Totally. 7:00 at night, 6, even before Shabbos comes out, and I'm suddenly feeling doff. I'm like flat like a doorknob, just like. I ended up spending a bunch of hours that night trying to inspire myself to prepare something, because I usually give shiurim or record stuff on Saturday night. I ended up watching YouTube for hours, listening to music, just researching nonsense and just like trying to clear my head. And I was like, hey, what just happened? This morning, you're standing in the garden and you're having a spiritual experience, for lack of a better word. Like literally, like Judaism felt good for a few hours. I'll be honest, it doesn't feel good for me every day when I'm putting on tefillin. Sometimes I'm connecting, but very often I'm not. This morning, I was davening. My 2-year-old, my toddler was screaming. My 5-month-old was screaming. Kaya was teaching, and the maid was busy with one of them. So I'm running, I'm trying to daven. I wasn't engaged. It wasn't a spiritual experience. I still did it. I've never missed tefillin since my bar mitzvah. I'm just too terrified to. And also because whatever, just a commitment I took. But it wasn't a spiritual experience, nothing of the sort. But yes, on Saturday it was, on Shabbos it was. And yet, a few hours later, I'm like, as human and as primitive and as uninspired as I've ever been. And I asked myself, I said, like, what is going on with me? I thought I'm on a trajectory, at least for 24 hours. Let me just stay on this trajectory for a while. It doesn't work that way because I am two people all the time. And most of the time, I'm my animal. Sometimes my godly soul gets to push itself up and create an extra zone, and I'm just in the zone. I'm engaged. I'm loving it. Often it happens on Yom Kippur, on a Rosh Hashanah, just like you're in the zone. Like maybe the last few hours of Yom Kippur we're complaining about the fast, but when you look at people called Nidre or Yom Kippur morning, you could tell that something's up. So, and the Neshama's alive. They're feeling engaged. Like for that moment, Judaism is real. For most people, when they sit in shul, those moments, Judaism's real. But the next day, whatever. Yeah, same arguments, same addictions, same wants, same pettiness, same triggers and emotional reactions, the same animal. And one of the big arguments of Tanya that's really resonated with me, and especially recently, like I give a shir every week to a few young boys and we discuss Tanya, is this idea that you never finish this battle. You never reach the spiritual level when this battle is over. So let me just tell you, not because I'm on a further level than any of you, but because that's what Tanya says, and I've spoken to many good people, it doesn't end. This battle doesn't end. It's ridiculous how long it lasts. It doesn't go anywhere. You're trying to find this equilibrium, this space. I read a story. It's a bit of a hectic story. Forgive me. But it brings out this point. It's a story from the Talmud. I'm trying to find it as I speak to you. I might not. But the story goes about a certain sage. The sage, his name was Rav Anan. And this Rav Anan was a very pious sage. And one time at a certain, he was able to release a bunch of women who were enslaved, and they didn't have a place to stay. So, okay, this is the story. I'm actually going to share it with you so you could see it. It's a story from the Talmud. I read it on Saturday night when I was trying to prepare a story to share. And it's coming to my mind as I speak to you. One time, some Jewish women who had been kidnapped and then released were brought to the city of Narda in Babylonia. This is 1800 years ago, 1600 years ago. They were taken to the attic of Rav Amram, the pious, and the ladder was taken away so that no man would climb to bother them. One of the women was exceptionally beautiful. Rav Amram took the ladder, which was so heavy that ordinarily it would take 10 men to move it, and picked it up all himself so that he could climb up. When he was halfway up, he braced himself and shouted, "There's a fire in Rav Amram's house." In other words, he called his students to just get him out of the zone. His students came running, and when they saw what they meant, they said, "We're ashamed at seeing our teacher so consumed with physical desire." Rav Amram says, "It's better for you to be ashamed by Amram in this world, so that you won't be ashamed by God, by him, as in by Rav Amram, in the next world." He had managed to expel his desire, which appeared in front of him in the form of a tiring inferno. Said Rav Amram to this desire, "Look, you are fire and I'm just flesh, but I am stronger than you." And this is from the Talmud. In case you were wondering what people discuss in the Talmud, it's not every page, but it's in the Talmud. And I read that story, and you know what? You might say, gosh, what a primitive story. And why is it even making it to the Talmud? Isn't the Talmud the book of Jewish law? So first of all, no, Talmud is the book of Jewish thinking. Jewish thinking has a lot of law, but it has stories like this. And what's the message? This message is one of the great sages, who many teachings are quoted in his name, And he allows this story to become famous, so much so it makes it into the Talmud. And 2,000 years later, I'm sitting with a group of you, and I'm sharing the story, what happened to a guy in Babylonia 1,600 years ago. Let bygones be bygones. No, just like, woo, it's over. But what was his message? His message is, I'm a great sage. You think I'm any less of an animal? I'm still an animal. I'm still human. This idea that people have that you're going to grow in your life and you're one day going to reach an experience in your life that you're going to be holy and beautiful and desires of the flesh is no longer going to happen, that's in death. In life, it doesn't happen. And if it happens, it's totally not because you earned it. It's whatever. It's happened. Some people reach a stage and they go totally, spiritual, but it's very unusual and usually wacko. And unfortunately, a lot of these people who try to paint themselves that way, very holy rabbis or holy, masters in India, just wait a few years till all the stories of sexual exploitation comes out from them. Why? Because it's impossible. You're fighting nature. I'll be honest, it's a big reason with the Catholic Church and why it ends up with so many scandals, specifically with children, is because this whole idea of not having intimacy is against human nature. Unlike Christianity, which sees the passion for sexuality as a negative, Judaism sees it as part of life, and it could be quite spiritual as it could be animalistic. But the point is, you're fighting nature. Nobody reaches a level when they no longer want it. It doesn't work that way. The animal is an animal. That's the way God designed a human being. He designed us with two souls. One is a basic, fundamental animal, and one is a spiritual animal. Not animal, a spiritual soul, this thing that pushes us beyond, a part of us that's angelic, that just makes us do acts of tremendous kindness without an agenda, that part. But fundamentally, we're all animals. And that's so important as people grow in their Yiddishkeit, grow in their knowledge, and they have this imagination, which seems fantastic, I'll be honest. I would love to believe it. It's fantasy. That if I sit and meditate, if I get myself into the zone, I will achieve this level. Friends, that I will never have the desires of the flesh again. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't. So much so that the sages tell us, Kal hagadol mechavera, yitzra gadol mimenu. The sages tell us in the Talmud. If you see somebody who's greater than you, that means in character, know this, that their animal soul is greater than yours as well. In other words, God always creates an equal. So if somebody has a great godly soul and they've reached a great level, believe me, their animal soul is as strong. Otherwise, it's not a battle. And the point of life is battle. So you look at this person, you look at this Rebbitzin, or you look at this, dynamic international speaker, or this, whatever, this person that, just not, they're quiet and silent, they're sitting in the back room, they're so pious. If they're truly pious, they are fighting battles that you and I cannot even imagine. And that's what makes them pious, the fact that they win. But this assumption that as people get holier and holier, the battles become less, it maybe become different, but not less. Yes, there are certain, we're told according to Jewish mysticism, there are a few people in each generation that are born with no animal soul, just a godly soul. Fine. But for the rest of us, for pretty much anyone in this room, unless I don't know you well enough, we are both animals and godly, and often more animalistic than godly. And that's the point of life. The point of life is to battle between the two yous. Will you be an animal, or will you be exceptional? But this idea, friends, that you ever reach a spiritual stage that the flesh doesn't matter, that you're not going to enjoy a good steak because you've just become a nun on a mountain, not a chance. Not a chance. It's not the point of life. The point of life is to battle. The point of life is to sit in this grind day in and day out, and day in and day out, and battle it, and battle and battle and battle. And you sit there saying, why? God, what do you want? There's no good answer to that, but there are a few decent answers. We've spoken about this before, but if I gave you a book to read, and the book went something like this, Let's meet Sarah. Sarah went to sleep last night and got a perfect 8-hour night's sleep. Woke up in the morning, felt fantastic, great hair day, great face day, wakes up totally in the zone, gets up, starts her day, everything's dynamic. She looks at her lovely husband who just treats her like absolute gold, goes out, the weather is stunning. What page are you going to get bored of this book? Life is, it's where life is challenging that beauty is created, where stories are created, where greatness or the opposite is created. But the point of life is to live a story. In heaven, everything's very predictable. Heaven's very boring, I'm telling you. It's boring. That's why you don't remember any of it from before your life. Just kidding. You don't remember because that's the design of life. But the point is, it's boring. Yeah, I'm sure my dad's having a great time over there, but it's pretty predictable. Heaven is very predictable. Unpredictability, challenges, is this world. It's here. The 90, 100 years we live in this world, it's about the challenges. Challenges isn't an anomaly of life, it is life. Yes, maybe the challenge of Corona is new to us, but the fact that life doesn't work out according to our plans shouldn't be new to us. I mean, yeah, most of us, we're all adults. We've all lived enough years in this world to know life doesn't play out exactly the way we want. The unpredictability, that challenge, is us. And believe me, sometimes I wish it wasn't. I sometimes look at myself and only the person knows the devils they fight, right? You can never look at somebody else knowing what devil they're fighting within, what their weakness is, what their, semi-addiction or full addiction is. Sometimes it becomes exposed, but very often you look at somebody and their face just covers over. I know my demons, big time. And sometimes I wish that life was easier. I turn to God and I'm like, really? You couldn't have given me another demon to battle? This one from all? This one's? Much more than one? It's funny that often we discover that people who we thought are great are very average. And we're like surprised about it. Not only at average, they're actually below average. You hear a great rabbi who did something absolutely immoral, or you hear of somebody who claims to be pious and religious and does something totally inappropriate, etc. You're like, how could it happen? Stop asking that question. How? Because that's the human condition. Every person that it doesn't happen to is because they are fighting a battle and thank God they're winning more often than they're losing. But the fact that human beings can undermine themselves and act animalistic, that's nature. That's nature. The fact that the more powerful a person gets, the more influence they get, their ego grows, and that causes them to do stupid things, that's nature. It's not like, oh my gosh, but I thought you were a great person. Yeah, and then the person started believing they're great and started believing that the rules of life don't apply to them, and they just came crashing down. That's life. We have to let go of this fantasy that there are perfect people in here, in this world, and then when we find that they're not perfect, we suddenly feel betrayed. You know what? I was doing so well in life, and then I found out that my ex friend, whatever, who I admired, was a total disaster. And I've shared this before. I've gone through, in my own life, people who were heroes for me when I was younger. And one of them came out to be a molester. One of them came out to be a woman chaser, very inappropriate, while he was married, chasing women, other married women. And many others. And of course, this is part of you saying, one second, but this person was an influence on me. This person was a good person and might still be a good person independent of it. Like, how could this happen? Because they're a person. That's why. You don't ever finish the battle. And the moment you think you finish the battle, that's when you're going to fall down. The moment, and it's all happened to us, like you've achieved something incredible in your life, you've made it to a milestone, you think the battle is over, you fell in love, and now everything is just going to cruise. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Life fights, fight, fight, fight. Each morning you wake up, it's not an angry fight, but it's knowing I'm showing up today and I know I'm going to take a punch. The punch might not come from outside, the punch might come from within me. My own weaknesses, my own impulses, my own stupidity, my own ego, my own naivete. I will be battling the whole day, sometimes more than others. But the battle is on. And that's life. It makes life interesting, it makes life scary, but that's life. I've yet to hear a father tell the kid of Barmy, I'm not saying they never do, but boy, life is going to be a nightmare of battles. I just pray that you have the moral clarity to win more battles than you lose. Maybe I have heard it, but that's really what the message is to each person that's entering adulthood. I have no idea what demons you're battling already, and I have no idea what demons you're going to be battling. But if I bless you with long life, then I know that the life I'm blessing you with will be challenging. The challenge might be from a coronavirus of China, or it might be from your own addiction, from that bottle on the shelf, from that phone in your hand. Whatever it is, you will battle. And please remember to never stop fighting. I hope that today's thought wasn't disheartening. That's not the intention. I'm sure that when I mentioned that we're going to talk about soul, you thought this is going to go in a very different direction. It's not about disheartening. It's about acceptance. The acceptance that God, some reason or not, finds pleasure in a world of struggle. And until death or until the Mashiach comes, whichever one, please God, Mashiach comes before the other one, that's the battle. That's the battle. It allows us to win, which means people achieve incredible things. It allows us to lose, which that's why you could see people collapse, and it allows us to win and lose. I think just today in my life, I won a few. I lost a few. Not big ones. Thank God today wasn't the big ones. Please God it ends that way. But the battle was on. How will I spend my time? How will I maximize it? What food will I eat? Will I eat what feels good in the moment and then have a sugar rush and not be able to focus on my work? Or will I eat healthy? Whatever it is, the battle is real. And I just pray that for myself and for each and every one of us, that whatever battles are intended for us in life, that we always remember that we can be stronger than it, and that we can stand up to the challenges of life. The moment we feel that we cannot is the moment we've caved in. When I believe that the challenge in my life is bigger than me and will consume me and take me down with it, I've lost the plot. God bless you, and I really hope that each and every one of us can tap in, first and foremost, to our godly soul and to our animal soul, and to use the animal soul for the sake of the godly soul. In other words, don't become a spiritual person without a personality. Use your personality, use your character, but for the sake of something bigger. Shkoyach.